Hello, Dr. Lewis and my colleagues from the 8321 Adult Learning Strategies course. My name is Paul Pérez-Jiménez. I usually go by Mr. Perez, but please, you must call me Paul, otherwise I feel you're addressing my dad. Although I am grateful for him for this nice silver hair, which I inherited from him. But that was 30 years ago. I digress. Please note that this is my version of a TED Talk, and it's about a subject that I often address in my classroom, which with my students, and which I've noticed it has now become appropriate for this class as well. So not to teach it, but to note it. Okay. Last summer, by the way, before I started my doctoral classes, I had a little time on my hands, and I constructed this clearboard, which I thought I'd put to good use now, and you'll see what I mean. So this is my attempt to combine some humor, at this point Miss Laura has probably elaborated on in her overview, as well as maybe a little bit of music, and then also address, well, you'll see, address two things. Andragogy and pedagogy. I'm sure as you're as much familiar as I am with these, but they've taken a new meaning, and you'll see what I mean. But to continue this, I'm going to have somebody who I use in class often to elaborate and continue the discussion, and I call him the pudgy professor. Okay. Hello, and I am who Mr. Perez refers to as the pudgy professor, but in reality, I'm just his stand-in when he is too chicken to show his face. But I will be speaking for him. Up until last week, I was blissfully and erroneously, actually quite erroneously, under the impression that I was unique in teaching in a manner that that most of my high school colleagues couldn't even fathom. For you see, I teach college courses to high schoolers, and I should say I had been teaching college classes to high schoolers that are really motivated. They're capable, they're responsible, and they're responsible enough to either take my intro to lit class or my British Literature 2321 sophomore lit class. And eventually during the year, as one of the motivators, probably at the beginning, at least I started that off, but I take this throughout the whole year, but to motivate in the learning process, I stress the idea that if you are a zombie, then you are my prime target. But not in the manner that you may think. You see, at this point, most of my students' interests are piqued. It's probably so is yours. And this is where you will have to bear with me, because I usually lead this conversation over a matter of days or weeks, and begin the class by starting off or stating that life is full of dichotomies. That is to say what Mr. Webster refers to as, or would say, describe as a division or contrast between two things that are represented as being opposed or entirely different. And if you recall from one of your models of teachings classes, if you recall the concept attainment strategy, I usually start off by giving examples of this. And what I mean is, I put up on the board the word yang, and inevitably everyone says, of course, yang. Great. Then I put up the word boy, and of course that would be girl. Although the girls sometimes come up with boyfriend, which is not what I meant, but okay. Then the word rich and poor, black and white. And we have fun with coming up with several other opposing concepts. But eventually, since I am an English teacher, I give them the word concrete. And after several attempts at its opposite, I continue by explaining that concrete is anything that we can sense. Sense through the five senses, of course. Anything we can see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. And we go on to name anything concrete. But I then ask, well, now that you know what concrete means, what is its opposite? I have yet to be surprised by a class that does not grasp that abstract is the opposite of concrete. Abstract are ideas and feelings. And of course, we go through a little routine, for they always come up with, or someone usually comes up with, oh no, sir, love is concrete. I can feel it. And I usually respond by asking them, okay, so place some love right on the palm of my hand. I want to see it. And yeah, some smart aleck always comes up and tries to kiss my hand. And that is not love. That's you slobbering all over my hand. So, finally, I lead them to the last two dichotomies that I want to address. The idea of the figurative and the literal. Although, I did notice that the dichotomies or contrasts are usually found everywhere. And if you are aware, you can pick up these nuances all the time. Such as the one in Knowles of chapter 4 with the content models that's stressed by traditional pedagogy versus the process stressed by andragogy. Or in Miss Laura's interpretation of chapter 6, and they do two kinds of learning theories. Those stressed by the proposers of theory versus those that interpret theory. Of which I tend to believe they are actually, those are actually theorists versus practitioners. Or maybe professors versus teachers. Anyway, however, I've digressed. Back to the figurative and the literal. I believe that the world is full of figurative zombies, or those that live off of us who are truly alive. For example, if I have a watch and a zombie wants it, well, they would not care or respect me, but pull out a gun and take it from me, or maybe even hit me over the head, but they'd have a watch. Zombies do not think past their nose and would rather sleep in class instead of pay attention and participate. Zombies mooch off the living. They are marked by apathy, illiteracy, hate, ignorance, anger, violence, and so on. Worse yet, they are slaves to their apathy and to the cycle of ignorance. While the living, well, I often ask my students, what should we do? What should we do about the zombies? And the main response I usually get is that we should shoot the zombies. But that would make us not care. And then that would make us zombies, wouldn't it? The living who are truly free know they cannot just kill or not pay any attention to zombies. Freedom comes from knowledge, and the living know that many of the zombies are our brothers, our sisters, our friends, our sons, our daughters, or even our wife or husband. Not to mention, they're human. Our job as the truly alive, as a truly smart and learned, is to help the zombies liberate themselves. For in truth, we all start off as zombies, as not knowing and self-absorbed. Yet somewhere in the course of our lives, we come to understand what being truly human is. We go from a pedagogical form of learning to an learning in an andragogical style, really caring about what we learn or to learn. So, in conclusion, I got a couple of questions for you. What is the best dichotomy that you can come up with? For, have you noticed this whole little routine that I go through? is a nice little analogy that I've been using for years. But I've also been pushing this type of teaching where the student takes responsibility for their own learning and go through a process of finding that for themselves. Hope I didn't bore you with my little lecture here, but I tried to make it, and I don't mean to be condescending with a little being funny, but sometimes as teachers do the funniest things to keep everybody awake, huh? Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.